on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Good show tonight. We're talking about jobs and the job market here in Nashville. Of course, we hear Nashville is booming. The unemployment rate is low. There are all kinds of new companies that are moving to Nashville. So what does that mean if you are looking for a job? We certainly want to hear from you if that is your situation. What is it like out there right now? We want to talk with Matt Lowney, the Director of Recruitment for Quorum Health. Matt, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Ben. I've done this a few times and always enjoy doing it, so thank you.
And I like to get a sense of, okay, we hear the unemployment rate is low. What does that realistically mean? What is the job market like out there right now?
So to oversimplify it, it's really good for some, and really the low unemployment isn't a huge bolster for many, right? So if you have a really finite skill set, if you're direct patient care in healthcare or IT or accounting, or with Amazon coming, supply chain is a pretty important skill set. There are way more jobs than there are people, and that's a great place to be, but there's also a way to handle being in that position as a job seeker, right? It's not just about, hey, can I just keep every 6 months pushing for the bigger paycheck? But then there's folks I kind of put in that paraprofessional bucket, right? So they have a college degree, but it may not kind of be in a hard skill set that is out there and needed. So for those folks, they're still having to work and get after it to find a job that makes sense for them and is a good skill fit for them. So, I kind of feel for those that it's good, it's really good, and for the rest of us, it's fine. I mean, it's really,
That's what I keep hearing. That some companies say, we can't find enough people to work.
Oh, yeah.
And then other people are like, I'm really trying to find a job, and they're not as easy to find.
When I think about employers like restaurants, right, they cannot find people to do the work. Now, one might argue that if they provided a better job, there would be more people to come work for them. Not to be oversimplistic, I think there is, in that world and many worlds, I think they mean there's not an ample supply of labor at the price point they want to pay. Right. I think that's the last caveat. I think in many of these environments, they feel like, a dishwasher should be $12 an hour job, and I can't find dishwashers. Well, maybe you need to pay more,
Are we seeing that? Are we seeing companies do that? Are they having to raise the price?
They're having to. It's a slow, progressive. That's why you see the raise. You see inflation kind of outpace the gains in salary growth, right? You've seen that a lot for the last 10, 12 years. Anytime there's a whole lot more jobs, you don't see a requisite lift in salaries, because I think employers are still trying to be conservative, rightfully so, and they also have a general sense of that's what this job pays, and so they don't want to pay more, but supply and demand pushes them in that direction. It's just kind of a little lagging to job growth. So.
And our city has grown so much, and we've talked on this show about affordable housing and that kind of thing. So let's say you are a restaurant and you want to hire people at $12 an hour, but no one around, the homes around you are going for $500,000. If you're over in, let's say, East Nashville, and you own a restaurant over there, how are you going to find people? That's tough.
That's a whole other set of issues. The affordable housing thing, I think at some point it's, you're cramming 10 of them in a room, or they're living half an hour away from the restaurant. But I think that's also where a lot of employers miss, is the idea of this intentionality around, I want to make this place a good place to work. So maybe I can't only afford $12 an hour, but how do I make it a more attractive environment? Maybe there's skills development. I don't want to get too cheesy down that, but if you're a restaurant and you're trying to attract and retain the best servers, it's about how do we help them be better servers, or how do we help them optimize their income? So how do we help understand if they were maybe sales training, or the opportunity to learn the business side of the restaurant so they can grow and develop and be assistant managers. I think a lot of employers miss that very obvious opportunity to make a very direct career narrative, if you will, for somebody to come in, and they can attract people based on that. If they've got a reputation of being somebody that cares about their employees and invest, those are cheap things to do. It's just effort and time, and if I know owning a restaurant's a real pain, so even more effort and hours is hard for the guy who owns it, but I think that's part of the solution.
And all right, so what are the jobs right now that are great to be in? And what are the ones that are not as great? You mentioned a couple up top, but what are the fields that are just booming right now?
So maybe a good indicator of that is how aggressively they're recruiting college grads. Because I mean, that tells me the last person you want to hire is somebody with no experience. So if they're going aggressively after, kids out of college, those tend to be indicative of they're working hard. They know they're going to have to not only hire a 22-year-old out of undergrad, they're probably going to have to invest in some skills development. And so, accounting and finance. So anybody kind of in that world, if you're a new grad, and there's ample opportunity, and it's going to continue to grow. Again, kind of the Amazon effect.
Accounting and finance. Okay, so that's going to be
you got to track the dollars and money, right?
Okay, all right.
And I would give you math might be a good example. Like I would say, if you're good at math, don't do math. I've never hired a mathematician other than maybe for school. If you like math, maybe the applied part of mathematics is accounting and finance roles, which I know aren't awesome. You're going to do general ledger and AR and AP, but the point is, they pay well for an undergrad, at least what I would think, 45, 50 grand out of college. But they put them on a very definitive path, and there will always be need for folks who can do the math, who can make sure, understand the impact of dollars and numbers. So, finance, accounting, always nursing. There's always a shortage. I think that's been belabored.
Nursing, okay, interesting.
Yeah. All right. But I think you're again, supply chain. Give you an idea. UT Knoxville has one of the most rigorous supply chain programs in the country, designed really for transportation, which is huge here in Middle Tennessee and Tennessee. But as Amazon comes in, right, that is a supply chain business, and they're going to look to UT Knoxville and just siphon as many of those kids as they can. Same thing with if there's Belmont has a program. So to your point of kind of like what should you be investing in, I think that's key. And if you're a second career person trying to invest, go learn some of the supply chain skill set or as best you can through a certificate or whatever, so you can prepare yourself for those roles. The liberal arts stuff, right, that's still a challenge. Like a philosophy major, I don't know what you do with that still. I've thought about that for 20 years. I haven't the first idea what you do with a philosophy major.
Because part of what you do, recruitment at Quorum Health.
Yep.
So you're out there, you're looking at resumes, and you're recruiting people to go to different jobs, but you're advising employers. I mean, you're out there in the middle of all this.
Yeah, more or less. So I work on the corporate side, right? So I'm looking at roles just for us. I have done the kind of third party, so I am the middleman of that exercise in a previous life. So kind of done a bit of both of that. For our world, what I do now is a lot of executive search, so maybe not highly relevant to what we do now, but certainly helping. I think where the real challenge is people get kind of 10, 15 years in career-wise, whatever it is, the path they were on, right, isn't as lucrative, or the market pivots away from their skill set, but they're used to making 80 grand a year, and they get stuck. And I see a lot of those conversations. Hey, I've got this skill set here, was cruising right along, and then the world changed on me, and then how do I pivot there? And I can't take a big hit back to 50 grand to start over. And those folks I really think struggle, and that can happen if you're a finance leader. You run out of opportunities. So that's something I really talk with people a lot about.
And I bet there may be people out there that I'd be fascinated to hear from that. Let's go to a couple calls now. Let's go to Cindy. Hello, Cindy.
Yes.
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
I think, just in my opinion, our economy, our minimum wage should be $15 an hour to start out with, because I have been in the healthcare field most of my life, and I've noticed since I left the hospital and I do home health, everybody wants you to start back at the bottom of the health, the rates. Well, you can't afford to do that when you're on 24 and 65 and 440 and stuck in all these roads that have to all be fixed at one freaking time, and you're not getting what you're driving in money to work. And I mean, our system is really messed up in Tennessee. You've been bringing all these companies in here and everything and paying them boo-hooks of bucks. And our roads, start on one road, finish it. And minimum wage should be at $15 an hour in the state of Tennessee for all that we are doing and bringing into Nashville. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. It's really crazy. We're never going to keep up with New York or none of the other states, because everybody wants to start everybody down on the lower chain. And I have two-year degrees, and I'm just now at $15 an hour.
All right, well, let's talk about that. All right, thank you. Cindy, thank you. Good call. She's upset about
a
the
lot
roads.
there. Roads. Boy, if I could fix that, I might be in a different job.
But I really like the idea of all right, minimum wage. She's saying it should be $15 an hour. It's not, and
it's not. And I know that's kind of a rallying call for different industries. I know food service is kind of on that path as well. I'm not an economist, so I don't pretend to be. I think you've got a couple issues. To just say $15 an hour is a little oversimplification, because then I think about what about the person making $16 an hour who's worked their way up from making 12, and all of a sudden somebody's new is at 15. What does that do to the person at 60? You've got compression issues that you're going to run into. You can't just continue to kind of push everybody up $3 or $4 an hour, or frankly, it could be on a percentage basis, 15, 20, 30%. I don't disagree with the fact that, what's a livable wage? That's another matter. I don't know how folks make it on $12 an hour, and I just have never figured that out. Particularly, it's food and housing and all that gets more expensive. I think that would be fascinating to understand. So she's not wrong, $15 an hour. I would also say that a lot of these healthcare companies that are paying that, they're not making money hand over fist. I mean, a handful are, good for them. But a lot of the home health companies, I get to talk to financials of hospitals. I put that against the other side, right? A lot of rural hospitals are going out of business because they can't afford their business. And labor and supplies are the most expensive part of their business. So you can't continue to squeeze that side of the house either. So she's right, there's a larger answer to this. I don't know that it's $15 an hour for, out of the gate. One would say, what's it now, 7.25 is the minimum wage. It's been that way forever.
And it's been that way, forever.
So it's effectively $4.50 an hour or something from when it was implemented. So,
and what I've heard is employers are concerned about raising minimum wage a little bit because of what you said, not necessarily because of that lower scale, but then it would push every other salary up.
There's a cascading issue.
And they probably all need to be pushed up. But I guess businesses are different. Would that push businesses out of business?
It could and could. I mean, I look at there's a point of healthy tension, right, between those who want to make money and those who pay them to do it. And I think there's a healthy tension, and in kind of the current political environment, one would say supply and demand will drive that. I don't know how much you want government involved in driving up salaries too much. But I think if I'm being honest, I think the pendulum's a little too far in the employer's favor on the whole than on the candidate side. So if there was some kind of graduated minimum wage to some number, I could rationalize that. Like it should be $10 or $12, and then in Nashville maybe it's 13, and in outlying areas it's 10. Something like that. I think we could get there. And then there's got to be something in the middle.
And that's also an interesting question. If our unemployment rate is so low, what are we seeing with wages? Are wages going up? Or again, it depends on the career.
On the whole, they are. So the average, they are. But it's fantastic for those that are greatly in need, and mediocre to neutral to those who are in what I'd kind of put paraprofessional. Our friend Cindy here, right, is a CNA or a home health aide or whatever, and the barrier to entry there is not super high, and that, by the way, is work I'd never do, so I'm not disrespecting it in the least. It's just the idea of the barrier to entry to be an IT data architect is a whole lot more challenging to just get into the education and kind of be smart enough to do it. Home health aide is 6 weeks oftentimes for CNA, and so again, supply and demand drives a lot of people move into that job. The more people drive into it, suddenly employers can find people at $10. And Cindy here, has been working her tail off to get to 15, and so again, if there's a tension, I think it is a little bit more in the employer's benefit. All
right, let's go to Karen. Hello, Karen.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm going to be 61 on tomorrow. I was laid off 20 months ago. I have applied for many positions. My background includes human resources, training and development. I was administrative assistant, a vocational teacher, even retail. So once I was laid off, this last time, again, 20 months laid off, I found part-time jobs and temporary jobs, things of this nature. But it's very interesting, as the gentleman spoke, everyone wants to go to a college, get a college graduate, and I think you mentioned that they've got to be trained and learn the different skills. Here I am. I have my graduate's and master's degree along with this other experience. I'm not saying I don't need to be trained. I'm always willing to learn new things. So I'm finding the difficulty of employment. Two reasons. One, I think because, as he stated, everyone wants a college graduate. No one wants someone that has experience and the willingness to go in and do the job. And I think you will probably agree that college graduates stay a little bit less than 2 months on the average on a job before they go to another one. So I'm really disgusted. And the second, my concern is, as you stated, these new companies come in and they're hiring new people, or they're bringing people from where they came from. So I would like to answer what a 61-year-old educated and trained adult to find employment with benefits and at a fair rate, and not something coming in an entry level, because I do have the skills.
No, I think that's...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karen, thank you. And I think we kind of touched on that, right? That folks find themselves in this role. So that is a far more common narrative that I hear than others. A couple things. I don't want to paint a picture. There is a whole lot of negatives to hiring new grads on the whole, right? To her point, stickiness isn't high. They kind of churn, and as soon as something's, they don't like the way their boss looks at them, they've got another option. They're out. That's a whole, like we were going to talk to new grads, that's a whole nother conversation. I think for Karen, though, and for folks mid-career wise, I think, realistically, she's kind of later career wise, it still speaks to networking and and putting the intentionality. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, hey, I've applied to 1,000 jobs, literally, and I've heard back from 2 or 3 and haven't had much luck. That's kind of the idea of, like, it's activity, but it's not outcomes. And I think the idea is, if you want to identify companies you want to work for, the LinkedIn has made this way easier than it used to be. And I think with Nashville, we still have that DNA of, like, we want to help. So if Karen said, hey, I don't know anybody at XYZ company, but I know you do, right? You'd probably be happy to talk to her and introduce you to your friend over there. And so, as a guy that does hiring, I would much rather hire an employer referral, because there's at least some basis of knowledge. So I think part of it might be job search strategy for Karen and anybody else, right, that's in that boat. Is it's great if you're willing to work for $35,000 and you're a college graduate and you just apply. Yeah, there's a place and a pace for those folks. For the rest of us, it's a different job search thing. It is the work of mapping out your strategy. Here's the people I'm going to talk to. Here's the companies I think fit. I'd also say for Karen, the idea here is she can benefit from all of these new jobs coming in. She may not get a job at what Smile Direct Club said they're going to do 2,000 hires, and Amazon 5,000, and Oracle maybe adding 1,000. That's great. But where those people are coming from are going to be mid-sized companies that you can actually know a human being at. So a company with 300 or 400 employees, they're going to lose their supply chain person to Amazon. They're going to lose their HR person to Amazon. Somebody like Karen needs to have a relationship with those folks as she kind of maps out kind of where she's looking, because her situation is really common. Like, it's great to hear 2% unemployment, but that doesn't help somebody who's unemployed. No. So I think it's about having a strategy. And there are companies, I've been sat in meetings before, right, that don't want to hire new grads. We'd rather hire somebody that kind of, Karen finds a job, I guarantee she's there for the next 8 years, 10 years, right? There are places that would love that, and she needs to figure out what those employers are. They're a little bit more age friendly, and there's resources. The Career Center will tell them. 50 Forward used to do something where, hey, these are employers that would go to 50 Forward and say, hey, we want to hire folks of a different age bracket because of all the other skills they add. So I think part of it might be a little bit of mindset, part of it might just be pure job search strategy. And what do you know about when they're sitting around the table talking about who they may want to hire, and let's say they have a college grad and they have a 61-year-old? Well, it's not the same job. I've never really said you want to hire. So you don't have that? I will say this, and this is, I think, the impression that a lot of folks who are older, here's the thing, if we had a bunch of 25, 22-year-olds, they would say, well, they want experience, they won't hire me because I don't have experience. We have 60-year-old folks, they're going to say they want young new grads, so they don't want to hire people with experience, and they're too expensive. You may have to figure out what the level set is. Maybe not 100,000, it might be 60 grand. But to get some work experience and get back into benefits and such, that's her choice. I've never sat in a room where they said that person's too old to hire. I have sat in thousands of those conversations. Do I think at some level age discrimination may exist? Sure, but I don't think it's to the degree, and it's not something you can solve, right? If you're 61 and looking for a job and you think all these employers over here have an issue hiring people who are 60, well, you're probably not going to solve that. So don't go, play in their pond, right? So, but there are opportunities, you feel like. That's not a
that doesn't mean that you're not going to get hired. You can.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's, and I think again, it's job search strategy and resources, and who do you want to, who you're connecting with.
Fascinating. All right, we're going to take a break. We actually went a little long there, but we're going to take a break. If you're on the line, hold on. If you want to call in, there are lines open. There's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.